Fire Inspector Thomas Brennan couldn't have known that the smoldering ruins before him concealed more than industrial accident. Behind him, the Rouge River ran black with factory runoff. Ahead, the collapsed skeleton of the Prometheus Iron Works rose against dawn sky like cathedral ribs. Between the two, 23 months of silence where 47 men had vanished without anyone asking why. The Delray district in 1917 existed in a state of geographical and temporal isolation that defied its proximity to civilization. 3 miles south of downtown Detroit, it might as well have been 300. The neighborhood was an industrial archipelago, each factory its own island, each boarding house its own nation, connected only by mud streets that turned impassable 6 months of the year. Prometheus Iron Works occupied 4 acres where the Rouge River bent sharply east. The foundry itself was a cathedral of industry, 200 feet long, 80 feet wide, ceiling vaulted 40 feet high. Built in 1898 by German immigrant Klaus Reinhardt, it had limped along producing agricultural equipment and railroad components for nearly 2 decades. Unremarkable. Barely profitable. Invisible. Klaus Reinhardt stood 6 feet 2 inches tall, shoulders broad from 3 decades working metal. 54 years old in 1917, he wore wire-rimmed spectacles that gave him professorial air despite hands scarred by burns and cuts. Workers described him as fair but distant, a man who quoted Goethe while calculating tonnage, who attended Lutheran services every Sunday, who paid wages on time. His foreman, Otto Krebs, 41, was shorter at 5 feet 9 inches but built like a brick furnace. Clean-shaven when most men wore mustaches, he had lazy left eye from childhood accident that made him appear perpetually suspicious. He'd worked for Reinhardt since 1903, lived in small house on factory grounds, never married. Neighbors knew him as quiet man who kept chickens. In spring of 1917, when America entered the Great War and Henry Ford's empire began transforming Detroit into arsenal of democracy, Prometheus Iron Works should have thrived. Instead, it barely survived. While River Rouge Complex and Highland Park churned out Liberty engines and Model Ts by thousands, Prometheus employed just 32 men producing forgings and castings for larger manufacturers. But workers noticed something. Giuseppe Martelli, 47, boarding house keeper on Dearborn Street, mentioned it to his wife in June 1917, Reinhardt buying chains. Heavy chains, 50 feet at a time from hardware store. And lime. Bags and bags of lime. For the works, his wife suggested. Maybe, Giuseppe said. But factories bought chains by the ton from suppliers, not 50 feet from retail. And lime for metallurgy came in barrels, not bags meant for agriculture. The first victim arrived seeking exactly what Detroit promised, work and new beginning. Stefan Kowalski, 29 years old. Born in Krakow, Austria-Hungary, Stefan had worked coal mines in Pennsylvania for 6 years, saved $147, enough to reach Detroit where Ford paid $5 a day, fortune compared to mine wages. He left wife Anna, 4 months pregnant, in Pittsburgh boarding house with promise, 2 months' work, I send for you. Our child will be born American, in house we own. Stefan arrived Detroit July 3, 1917. Found city overwhelmed. Ford had 15,000 applications for 3,000 positions. Dodge Brothers, Packard, Studebaker, all turning away men by hundreds. On July 7, hot Saturday afternoon, Stefan walked into Prometheus Iron Works. Reinhardt stood in office doorway, wiped hands on apron. You know foundry work? Coal mine, 6 years. I work hard, anything. Start Monday. $3.50 a day, boarding included. Stefan must have felt salvation. Later, searchers found his last letter to Anna, dated July 8, never mailed, tucked in jacket pocket. Dearest Anna, found work. Good German man, has foundry. Says I can live there until I save for house. Pay is less than Ford but sure. Will send money in 2 weeks. Kiss the baby for me when she comes. Your devoted husband, Stefan. Stefan Kowalski began work Monday, July 9, 1917. Nobody ever saw him leave the Prometheus Iron Works alive. But nobody thought to ask why. In Detroit in 1917, men came and went like sparks from grinder. Today's worker was tomorrow's memory. The city was consuming people faster than it could count them. Immigrants, migrants, drifters, all feeding the furnaces of industry. Stefan was simply the first to feed Reinhardt's furnace literally. The pattern, though invisible then, was already established. Reinhardt posted hiring notices not at employment offices but at train stations and mission houses, targeting most desperate, most isolated, most unlikely to be missed. Men with poor English. Men alone. Men who'd told no one exactly where they'd gone. Otto Krebs handled the boarding arrangements. You stay in dormitory, he'd tell new hires, until you get established. The dormitory was converted warehouse attached to main foundry, 16 cots, wood stove, single door that locked from outside for security against thieves. Other foundries in Del Rey used similar arrangements. Nothing appeared unusual. But Prometheus Dormitory had modification others lacked: reinforced door, windows boarded against winter wind, and basement accessed only through trapdoor in floor, trapdoor that workers assumed led to coal storage. It didn't. By December 1917, 6 men had left without notice from Prometheus Iron Works. Giuseppe Martelli knew because they'd stayed at his boarding house first, mentioned they'd found work at Reinhardt's place, then never returned for belongings left behind. You see Stefan Kowalski? Giuseppe asked another boarder who worked nearby foundry. The Pole? No. Reinhardt says he went to Ford, got hired. Without his things? His wife's photograph. Shrug. Men do strange things. Maybe he was ashamed, couldn't write. Detroit in 1917 ran on assumptions. Assumptions covered multitude of sins. Reinhardt and Krebs had discovered something the British Empire couldn't comprehend. Industrial efficiency applied not just to steel, but to murder. The same principles that let Detroit outbuild the world, standardization, systematization, vertical integration, worked equally well for darker purposes. They had raw materials, desperate men, infrastructure, isolated foundry, demand, steel for war, and supply chain, lime, chains, fuel. They had process, perfected over months. They had disposal method, furnaces that ran 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to reduce bone to ash. And they had something British Empire, with all its workshops, lacked: complete invisibility through industrial camouflage. By Christmas 1917, Prometheus Iron Works employed only 4 regular workers, men who lived in Detroit proper, went home each night. The boarding workers cycled through every 2 to 3 weeks. 16 at a time. Most lasting only days. Smoke rose from Prometheus Foundry 20 hours daily. Normal for wartime production. That the smoke sometimes smelled different on certain nights, acrid, organic, wrong, well, foundries always smelled terrible. Who could say what was normal? The neighborhood began to notice only one thing: Reinhardt and Krebs were getting rich. Bought new truck, Giuseppe told his wife in January 1918. Cash. And Krebs has new suit, good wool. But foundry looks busier, not busier. Where's money from? War production, she said. Everyone profits. But Giuseppe noticed something else. No delivery trucks came to Prometheus regularly. And the boarding workers, when he saw them shuffling to factory before dawn, moved like men in dream. Slow. Compliant. Wrong. He should have said something. Everyone should have said something. But Detroit in 1918 had bigger problems than one strange foundry in Del Rey. The city was drowning in its own success: 300,000 new residents in decade, housing crisis, Spanish flu outbreak, race riots brewing. The police had 16 officers for all of Del Rey. The factory inspectors came once a year if lucky. Prometheus Iron Works fell through every crack in system designed to process, not protect. And in those cracks, Klaus Reinhardt had built something monstrous. A factory that consumed men as efficiently as it consumed coal, that turned flesh into ash as readily as iron into steel, that operated on principle Detroit itself was founded on, that productivity excused all sins. The British had laughed at American workshops. But they'd never imagined workshop could be this. Detective Sergeant James Whitmore, 38 years old, lost his right eye at Belleau Wood in June 1918. Invalid home with glass eye and Distinguished Service Cross, he returned to Detroit Police Department in September with mind trained by war to see patterns in chaos. The military had taught him reconnaissance, movement tracking, how to notice when terrain didn't match what it should be, how to recognize when absence of something, corpses, shell craters, blood, meant something had been cleaned up, not that nothing had happened. These skills made him excellent detective. They also made him sensitive to things other officers dismissed. His first day back, reviewing missing persons reports, he noticed something. 47 men, he told Lieutenant Morris, reported missing from Delray District in 18 months. Delray's a warren, Morris said, not looking up from paperwork. Men come, men go. Half are running from wives or debts. 47. In area of half square mile. That's one missing person per 2 weeks, sustained. You've been gone. City's bigger now. 250,000 new people since 14. Which means more reports, not less follow-up. Whitmore's glass eye didn't move, giving his stare unsettling intensity. When did we decide missing immigrant doesn't merit investigation? Morris finally looked up. When we got 6 murders a week, 300 saloons violating prohibition, and race riot waiting to happen. Pick your battles, Jim. But Whitmore had spent 6 months in trenches picking battles. He knew which ones mattered. He started with Giuseppe Martelli's boarding house, worked backward. Giuseppe remembered 6 men specifically who'd mentioned Prometheus Iron Works. Stefan Kowalski, 29, Polish, July 1917. Henrik Johansson, 34, Swedish, August 1917. Mikhail Petrov, 41, Russian, September 1917. Antonio Rossini, 25, Italian, October 1917. Franz Müller, 52, German, November 1917. Jerzy Wojcik, 31, Polish, December 1917. They say they find work at Reinhardt's foundry, Giuseppe explained. They go there, never come back. I keep their things 6 months, then. He shrugged helplessly. You report this? To who? Sergeant Kowalski says men abandon belongings all the time. I'm running Charity House. Whitmore examined the belongings. Cheap suitcases mostly, but contents told stories. Stefan's case, wedding photograph, rosary, work gloves worn thin, letters from wife, 17 of them, increasingly worried. $8.35 in coins. Henrik's case, carpenter tools, valuable $40 worth, Bible in Swedish, address of sister in Minnesota written on paper. Mikhail's case, Orthodox icon, family photograph, wife, for children, pocket watch engraved, to Papa 1912. These men didn't abandon families, Whitmore said quietly. They were sending for them. Giuseppe nodded. Stefan's wife, she write me 4 times. Where is my husband? I tell her I don't know. Then letters stop. I think. He couldn't finish. Whitmore spent March 1918 visiting other boarding houses in Delray. Same story everywhere. Men mentioned Prometheus. Men disappeared. Belongings left behind. He compiled list. 47 names over 18 months. Average age, 35. All immigrants. All poor. All alone in Detroit. "I want to visit Prometheus Iron Works," he told Morris. "On what grounds?" "Being workplace men mentioned before vanishing isn't crime." "Missing persons investigation. You have no evidence they're missing from there. Just that they worked there. Men leave jobs, Jim. Without collecting wages? Without belongings." Morris rubbed temples. "Fine. But go gentle. Reinhardt's producing war material. Has government contracts. We don't harass defense contractors without cause." April 3, 1918, 10:15 a.m. Whitmore's first visit to Prometheus Iron Works revealed nothing except how perfect it was for concealment. The foundry sat on bend of Rouge River with forest behind, empty lots on sides, view from road blocked by office building. Nearest neighbor was quarter-mile away. The constant noise of machinery, hammers, presses, furnaces, created acoustic barrier. Someone could scream inside and nobody would hear 20 feet away outside. Klaus Reinhardt met him in office. Impeccably polite. "Detective. How can I assist?" Following up on missing persons reports. "Several men worked here before disappearing." Reinhardt frowned, concerned. The raid force assembled in pre-dawn darkness. 18 officers, 6 federal marshals, Detective Whitmore, and Dr. Henderson, who'd volunteered as medical examiner in case we find them alive. Nobody believed they would. They surrounded Prometheus Iron Works silently. No lights visible inside. Whitmore and Marshal Frank Davis approached main door. Davis carried sledgehammer. Didn't need it, door was unlocked. Inside, foundry stood cold and dark. Equipment silent. No workers. "Dormitory," Whitmore directed. They found it empty. 16 cots stripped. No personal belongings. Floor swept clean. As if nobody had lived there for years. "They knew," Marshal Davis said. "Someone warned them." But Krebs's cottage showed signs of hasty departure. Coffee pot still warm on stove, chickens in coop unfed, bed unmade. He'd left within hours. "Search everything," Whitmore ordered. "Especially basement." The main foundry had no basement access visible. They searched 30 minutes before Officer Patrick Collins noticed. Slag pile in corner seemed newer than surrounding dirt. They dug. Found trap door beneath, concealed under ton of waste material. Whitmore descended stairs with torch. The smell hit first. Not corpses, worse. Chemical smell of lye and chloral hydrate mixed with something organic and ancient. The smell of death processed through industry. The basement extended 40 feet beneath foundry floor, hand-carved limestone chamber, ceiling reinforced with timber beams. 6 rooms branching off central corridor. First room, 12 sets of chains bolted to walls. Each chain ended in manacle sized for human wrist. Below each manacle, limestone worn smooth by years of pacing in circles, radius determined by chain length. Grooves in stone worn by desperate feet. Second room, medical examination table. Leather restraints. Instruments, some medical, some metalworking tools. Bloodstains on wood too numerous to count. Third room, personal belongings. Systematically organized on shelves like warehouse inventory. 47 wallets, each labeled with name, arrival date, processing date. 42 pocket watches. 61 wedding rings, some men wore more than one. $3,847 in currency, coins, bank drafts. 189 photographs, faces staring at camera, unaware they documented victims. 23 letters never mailed. Clothing folded and stacked by size. Officers stood silent, looking at wall of photographs. So many faces. Fourth room, Krebs's quarters. Cot, desk, and ledger. Whitmore opened it. Found bookkeeping more meticulous than any accountant. July 9, 1917, Stefan Kowalski. Polish. $147 carried. Moderate resistance. Chloral 15 mg daily sufficient. Confined 9 days. Assets collected July 18th. Processing July 18th, 11 p.m. Furnace temperature 2100 degrees Fahrenheit. Complete reduction 4 hours. Slag removed July 19th, 6 a.m. Net profit, $147 cash, $12 tool value, $8 clothing value. Total, $167. Entry after entry. 47 men reduced to profit margins. Marshall Davis read over Whitmore's shoulder. Jesus Christ. It's inventory log. They processed them like steel. The ledger detailed methodology refined over months. Recruitment. Target men with visible cash or bank drafts. Offer employment and boarding. Isolate immediately. Assessment. First night, drug evening meal with chloral hydrate. Search belongings while victim unconscious. Calculate value. Confinement. Move to basement. Chain in cell. Keep drugged but conscious. Extract information about bank accounts, family contacts, additional assets. Collection. Forge victim signature, samples taken while drugged, to collect wages from previous employers, withdraw bank funds, sign over property. Processing. When assets fully collected or victim became problematic, resisted, injured, ill, execute by various means. Body rendered in foundry furnace at night when noise would mask any sound. Disposal. Bone fragments crushed, mixed with legitimate foundry slag, dumped with industrial waste at Rouge River site. Reinhardt had made notation in margin of one entry. R.W. Taylor's principles of scientific management applied to problem of disposal. Standardization of method reduces time from 8 hours to 4. They'd studied efficiency engineering for murder. Fifth room. Empty except for single-occupied chain. Anton Weiss, 27 years old, Hungarian immigrant, had been dead approximately 4 days. Body had bloated in basement heat. Wrists rubbed to bone by manacles. Cause of death appeared to be dehydration. Water bucket overturned, unreached despite desperate attempts. He'd been forgotten when they fled. Dr. Henderson examined body silently, then excused himself to vomit outside. Sixth room. The processing chamber. Heavy wooden table with restraints. Pulley system attached to ceiling beams. Drain in floor. Walls. Scrubbed but luminol testing, new technique Henderson suggested, revealed massive blood evidence. Above table, instructions written in German on wall like workshop guidelines. 1. Ensure chloral dose sufficient, resistance delays process. 2. Complete asset documentation before proceeding. 3. Maintain furnace 2000 degrees Fahrenheit minimum. 4. Allow 4 hours minimum processing time. 5. Crush bone fragments immediately. 6. Record all proceeds accurately for tax purposes. The final line would have been darkly funny if it weren't so horrifying. They'd planned to report the income. Marshall Davis found one more document in Krebs's desk. Letter drafted but never sent, dated September 14, 1918. Klaus. Schneider escaped. He will talk. We must flee tonight. I suggest. Destroy ledger. Do not. Too valuable as reference for future. Remove all evidence from basement. Impossible. Limestone hold stains. Burn dormitory records. Yes. Separate directions. I go Canada, you go Mexico. Meet Argentina in 1 year if safe. Our error was keeping him conscious too long. Future operations must use higher initial dose. Also, we should have processed Schneider immediately despite his low asset value, $43. Deviating from system causes problems. Efficiency demands consistency. Otto**. They'd planned to do this again. Somewhere else. Better. Whitmore stood in basement, surrounded by evidence, and felt rage so pure it burned. Not hot rage, cold, calculating fury that drove him upstairs, to telephone, to personally contact every police department from Detroit to Mexican border. Klaus Reinhardt, 54, 6 feet 2 inches, 190 pounds, German accent, wire-rimmed spectacles. Otto Krebs, 41, 5 feet 9 inches, 165 pounds, lazy left eye. Armed and dangerous. Wanted for 47 murders. Do not approach alone. The manhunt lasted 6 days. September 27, 1918. Toledo, Ohio. Railroad police found Otto Krebs in freight car heading toward Pennsylvania. He'd shaved his beard, wore different clothes, but the lazy eye gave him away. He didn't resist. Seemed almost relieved. In interrogation, he spoke for 6 hours straight. Detailed, clinical, proud. You understand efficiency? He asked Whitmore. Taylor's principles? Ford's assembly line? We applied same concepts. Raw material enters, desperate men. Processing occurs, asset extraction. Final product exits, capital. Klaus and I met in 1903 at Efficiency Engineering lecture. We recognized same vision. Factory was failing. We needed capital. Method presented itself when homeless man died in furnace accident. Complete consumption, no remains. We realized potential. First was accident. Vagrant we'd hired, discovered he had $200 hidden. We thought, this could work systematically. Started deliberately in July 1917 when war created perfect conditions. Transient population, overwhelmed police, industrial camouflage. Average profit per unit per man was $178. 47 units over 23 months. Total revenue, $8,366. Operational costs minimal. Chloral hydrate, chains, additional furnace fuel. Net profit approximately $7,800. We made mistakes. Keeping Schneider conscious was error. Should have increased dose. Also, we selected some low-value units, men with under $50. Inefficient. Future operations would set minimum threshold. We had plans. Move to Argentina. Establish similar operation near Buenos Aires. Immigrant population there, industrial infrastructure, weak policing. Could scale to 20 units monthly with proper system. Whitmore stopped him. Units? They were people. Men with families, dreams. Krebs looked genuinely confused. Yes. Human capital. All economics is processing of human value into monetary return. We simply removed intermediary steps, wages, time, market inefficiency. Direct conversion. He believed it. Completely. October 2nd, 1918. Windsor, Ontario. Klaus Reinhardt was found in boarding house, teaching accounting to local workers. Using fake name but same spectacles. He resisted arrest. Canadian police had to subdue him. Found in his possession, modified ledger with notations about improving the system, sketch of larger basement complex, and letter of introduction to Argentine industrialist. In custody, he refused to speak except to say, "We did nothing Ford doesn't do." He processes men into automobiles. We process them into capital. Same principle. He's celebrated. We're condemned. Hypocrisy. Both men showed no remorse. Krebs asked if he could publish methodology for academic interest. Reinhardt requested his efficiency calculations be donated to engineering library. Final accounting, completed by police forensic team. 47 men murdered. Anton Weiss found chained in basement, cause of death, dehydration/neglect. Remains of bone fragments found in slag dumps at Rouge River site. Forensic analysis confirmed human origin in samples, estimated 40-plus individuals based on unique skeletal markers. $3,847 recovered from basement, returned to families. Personal effects identified and returned when possible. 28 families never learned fate of missing men, bodies too degraded for identification. The basement chambers were documented by photographer, then sealed with concrete by order of City Health Department. The foundry was demolished November 1918. Gustav Schneider, the man who escaped, spent 4 months in Harper Hospital recovering. Suffered permanent psychological damage. Testified at trial but never fully recovered. Died by suicide in 1923, leaving note, "I still hear Anton screaming." The trial of Klaus Reinhardt and Otto Krebs began March 3, 1919. Lasted 17 days. Prosecution presented ledger, photographs, testimony, physical evidence. Defense argued insanity. Jury deliberated 42 minutes. Guilty on all 47 counts of first-degree murder. Both men were sentenced to death by electric chair, Michigan's newly adopted execution method, considered more humane than hanging. Klaus Reinhardt showed no emotion at sentencing. Asked permission to speak. Judge Peterson, against advice, allowed it. "Gentlemen," Reinhardt addressed courtroom, "you convict us for applying principles you celebrate daily. Henry Ford does not ask assembly line workers if they consent to exhaustion. He processes them for profit. Slaughterhouses in Chicago do not mourn cattle. They optimize killing efficiency. We saw men as resource to be harvested. America sees men same way, as labor units, consumption units, production units. Difference is merely directness of processing. You built Detroit on principle that human life has monetary value calculable to cent. We calculated. You're uncomfortable because we removed pretense. In 50 years, when history judges this era, they will see we were simply ahead of our time. We understood what America believes but refuses to admit. People are coal. You burn them for warmth. We simply used actual furnace." Judge Peterson ordered him removed. But words echoed. Otto Krebs spoke more simply, "We regret nothing except inefficiency of being caught." June 12, 1919, 12:01 a.m. Klaus Reinhardt was executed at Jackson State Prison. Last words, Goethe wrote, "Where there is much light, shadow is deep." Detroit's lights cast long shadows. You've only eliminated one. June 12, 1919, 12:47 a.m. Otto Krebs was executed. Last words, "Method works. Someone will perfect it." Their bodies were cremated at their request, final irony not lost on anyone. Ashes were dumped in unmarked location. The Delray District Community Response. On June 15, 1919, citizens of Delray held mass funeral for 47 victims. Each name read aloud. Each family present received white rose. Giuseppe Martelli spoke, "We knew something was wrong. We felt it. But we said nothing because silence was easier than action. We are complicit through our comfort with not knowing. May God forgive us. May these men rest knowing we finally saw them." The site of Prometheus Iron Works was purchased by city, declared toxic waste zone due to foundry chemicals. Remained empty lot for decades. In 1957, it was finally redeveloped, became parking lot for Ford River Rouge Complex Tour Center. Bitter irony. Site of industrial murder became tourist attraction celebrating industrial achievement. No marker indicates what happened there. Institutional legacy. The Prometheus case revolutionized American law enforcement. Detroit Police Department established first missing persons bureau with dedicated detectives. Required follow-up on every report within 72 hours. Policy copied nationwide. Michigan State Legislature passed Boarding House Safety Act, 1920, requiring registration of all industrial housing, monthly inspections, maximum occupancy standards, prohibition of exterior locks on dormitories, mandatory reporting of worker departures. American Federation of Labor used case to argue for workplace protections, union oversight, worker rights. Prometheus shows what happens, organizers said, when profit is only measure of human value. Federal Bureau of Investigation, newly renamed from Bureau of Investigation, cataloged case as example of industrial camouflage crime, using legitimate business to conceal systematic murder. Influenced J. Edgar Hoover's focus on organized crime patterns. Victims' families. Of 47 murdered men, only 19 were successfully identified from remains and personal effects. Stefan Kowalski's wife Anna never remarried. Received his $8.35 found in belongings plus $147 recovered from Reinhardt. Used it to return to Poland with daughter. Daughter, Maria, survived World War II, immigrated to America in 1951, lived to age 89. She kept her father's final letter framed in her home until death. Henrik Johansson's sister in Minnesota received his carpenter tools, worth more than any monetary compensation. She donated them to Swedish-American Historical Society with plaque. These tools belonged to man who came to America seeking honest work. Evil found him instead. May his memory inspire us to remain vigilant against darkness disguised as opportunity. 28 families never learned what happened to missing men. Spent decades wondering. Some wives remarried after 7-year absence declaration. Some refused, waiting for returns that never came. One woman, Margaret O'Connor, wife of missing Michael O'Connor, not confirmed as Prometheus victim but suspected, placed newspaper advertisement every year until her death in 1963. Michael, if you read this, come home. Or if anyone knows his fate, please write. I only need to know. Nobody ever wrote. Detective James Whitmore received commendation for solving case. Promoted to lieutenant. Retired 1934 after distinguished career. In his private journal, found after his death in 1956, he wrote, I solved Prometheus case but never felt satisfaction. 47 men died because system was designed not to notice missing poor immigrants. I didn't fix system. Just caught 2 men who exploited it too obviously. How many others fall through cracks we never discover? How many Klaus Reinhardts operate within legal boundaries, grinding men for profit in slower, sanctioned ways? Prometheus was crime. But principle it embodied, that human life has monetary value to be optimized, extracted, processed, remains foundation of our economy. We punished method, not philosophy. The site today. The parking lot at 1701 Dearborn Street, Delray District, Detroit, shows no indication of its history. Tourists park there before taking Ford Rouge factory tour, celebrated journey through American industrial innovation. Tour guides don't mention that beneath asphalt, 47 men died in basement chambers. That furnaces celebrated for producing engines also consumed flesh. That efficiency principles transforming modern world were tested here in darkest application. Soil tests conducted in 2003 for environmental study found bone fragments consistent with human remains mixed with industrial slag throughout area. Study was classified, site declared remediated, development continued. Old residents of Delray, few remaining, don't speak about Prometheus. Cursed ground, Giuseppe Martelli's grandson told interviewer in 1988. Family never walked there after. Grandfather said you could still smell it on certain nights. Not smoke, but something burning that shouldn't burn. Final statistics. 47 men murdered between July 1917 and September 191,823 months of operation average 2.04 murders per month. 19 victims positively identified, 28 victims never identified. $8. 366 total profit. $178 average profit per victim. 4 hours average processing time. 2,000 degree F furnace temperature. 0 survivors besides Gustav Schneider. The lesson unlearned. America industrialized faster than Britain, Germany, France combined. Detroit outbuilt the world. Ford's assembly line revolutionized production. Taylor's efficiency principles transformed work. But Klaus Reinhardt was right about one thing. The principles that made Detroit great, standardization, optimization, measuring human value in monetary terms, processing people for profit, contain seeds of monstrosity. Prometheus Iron Works was crime. But it was also mirror. Every factory that grinds workers until exhaustion, every corporation that calculates acceptable death rates, every system that treats humans as units to be processed, they are Klaus Reinhardt's philosophical descendants, operating within law but embodying same principle. People are fuel. Detroit buried Prometheus. Demolished foundry. Sealed chambers. Paved over earth. But burying isn't forgetting. Forgetting isn't learning. And learning without changing is just remembering horror without preventing its return. The British laughed at American workshops until Detroit outbuilt an empire. Nobody laughed about what happened when efficiency principles designed for metal were applied to flesh. The foundry is gone. The principle remains. And somewhere, someone calculates, how can this be optimized? Prometheus Iron Works operated from 1898 to 1918. The building was demolished in 1918. The site was paved in 1957. No memorial marks the location. 47 men entered seeking American dream. None left alive. Their names deserve remembering. Their deaths demand vigilance. Because efficiency without humanity isn't progress. It's just murder with better bookkeeping. Month 19 victims positively identified, 28 victims never identified. 8. 366 total profit. $178 average profit per victim. 4 hours average processing time. 2,000 degree F furnace temperature. 0 survivors besides Gustav Schneider. The lesson unlearned. America industrialized faster than Britain, Germany, France combined. Detroit outbuilt the world. Ford's assembly line revolutionized production. Taylor's efficiency principles transformed work. But Klaus Reinhardt was right about one thing. The principles that made Detroit great, standardization, optimization, measuring human value in monetary terms, processing people for profit, contain seeds of monstrosity. Prometheus Iron Works was crime. But it was also mirror. Every factory that grinds workers until exhaustion, every corporation that calculates acceptable death rates, every system that treats humans as units to be processed, they are Klaus Reinhardt's philosophical descendants, operating within law but embodying same principle. People are fuel. Detroit buried Prometheus. Demolished foundry. Sealed chambers. Paved over earth. But burying isn't forgetting. Forgetting isn't learning. And learning without changing is just remembering horror without preventing its return. The British laughed at American workshops until Detroit outbuilt an empire. Nobody laughed about what happened when efficiency principles designed for metal were applied to flesh. The foundry is gone. The principle remains. And somewhere, someone calculates, how can this be optimized? Prometheus Iron Works operated from 1898 to 1918. The building was demolished in 1918. The site was paved in 1957. No memorial marks the location. 47 men entered seeking American dream. None left alive. Their names deserve remembering. Their deaths demand vigilance. Because efficiency without humanity isn't progress. It's just murder with better bookkeeping.